So there's a lot of angst and uncertainty and pain because I don't actually think that suffering or poverty inherently leads to empathy, right? Or I don't think that having had to overcome barriers makes you a leader.
Raquel Aldana has faced her share of life challenges. Born in Central America, in 1982, Raquel and her family escaped the civil wars ravaging El Salvador and Guatemala.
When I came to the U.S., I was only 10 years old. Very quickly, I was sort of navigating the U.S. for my parents. For me, it was interesting to see my parents lose their sense of leadership, right? That was hard for me to see them struggle. The experience of being an immigrant was difficult. I didn't speak English, so we got teased.
But it was not the struggle that inspired Raquel. It was more a sense of purpose and leadership that her parents instilled in her.
My mother, in particular, was very instrumental, I think, in my identity, because she always had a service vision and went into very poor communities, both in El Salvador and in Guatemala. I became my mother's right hand. It immediately put me in a situation of both leading by example, the expectation of leading by example, but also leading because I enjoyed it.
Her passion to lead helped her to become the first in her family to graduate from college. First Arizona State University, and then Harvard Law School.
Initially, when I went to college, I was majored in literature. But I just felt like it was too disconnected from real people's lives and the issues that they were facing. So the idea of being a lawyer spoke to me. I was very interested in racial justice and economic justice. I took immigration law, but I remember thinking very intentionally that I didn't want to do the immigration clinic. I didn't at the time appreciate that immigration law was about human rights. I certainly taught it in a way that was very broad. Like I always said to people, immigrants are the face of the failure of law and the failure of rights.
Today, Raquel is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Diversity, Professor of Law at UC Davis.
I love the classroom a lot, but I knew that I had leadership skills and I knew that there was a need to have different voices and different faces in leadership in higher education. And I just happened to come in at a time when I could connect the dots for UC Davis. Part of what I'm trying to do is to ensure that the work of equity isn't something that is at the periphery of what we're doing. And is there anything that we can do as institutions of higher learning to not only transform the lives of the individual students we're admitting, but transform the lives of the communities from which they come? We have to engage in a cultural shift that embraces the entire university. I think we just need to acknowledge that in a very multicultural society like ours, with a very complex racial history, those realities will always be present for us. And I don't think it's a disservice. I think, frankly, for me, the color blindness is a disservice to our reality. People forget to recognize that color blindness suggests an erasure of difference. And normally when people talk about color blindness or neutrality, they are imposing a dominant culture and they're asking everybody else to conform. And those cause tensions because people feel threatened in their own ability to access. People who are by nature progressive worry about their own place in the universe when, people like me begin to advocate for changes.
Raquel continues to seek ways to help motivate universities to think more broadly.
We as a society are allowing the institutions that are the most elite, where the innovation is going on, where the scientific research is going on, where people are thinking about solving the world's problems. Those spaces are now accessible to people who haven't traditionally occupied those spaces. But at some point, we also have to acknowledge that as an institution, we either grow with that or we fail. So yeah, I'm excited because of what we're doing here at UC Davis. We're changing lives. And those lives that we're changing will themselves change lives. And so it's like, that's a lot of power. So it's great, yeah.